Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello, nerds! Welcome to the podcast. How are you? This week, we have a special guest. It's Rachel Meltzer. She is a freelance writer and a freelance writing coach. I've known her for quite a long time, since I thru hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, I think, because she's also a thru hiker. She was on the Appalachian Trail, and we got to know each other via Instagram, started DMing each other, spoke on the phone a few times. We became internet friends, and I kicked her butt a few times about her business on the phone. And I guess she liked getting her butt kicked because she hired me as a coach, and right now she's my client. So that's my introduction of Rachel. But Rachel, welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hey, everybody. I'm a freelance writer. I got started freelance writing to fund basically being a digital nomad and doing van life. And I live in a house now, again, after having done van life and through hiking. And I'm also a freelance writing coach. So I teach other people how to become freelance writers so they can, live out their dreams with a job that actually pays them well enough to do that.
Sweet. And we'll get to the meat of that. But first, I want to ask you, what lights you up these days?
I'm really obsessed with just like social interactions in general. I'm a people person, and I used to try to deny it, and now I'm trying to fully embrace it. I really enjoy my coaching calls. I enjoy making new friends and building a community. But also I'm learning how to love myself even when I'm alone. So it's sort of both sides of the same coin.
Oh my
Or
God,
two
I
sides of the
love
same
that.
coin.
It's so important to just own what we love and who we are, and not constrict ourselves with shoulds. Like, I shouldn't need other people so much. I should be more independent. No, if being around people brings you this much joy, just own it.
Yeah. I used to should myself all the time. It was like my favorite word, and it was awful. It was not fun.
All right. So now tell us, please, about your story. I've known you for a few years, but people who are listening to this might not. So tell us about your story and how you got to becoming a freelance writer. Like, what fueled this transition for you? Where were you before, and why did you make the change?
Yeah. I guess I should jump in with, I would consider myself to be a very all or nothing person. So I don't really do anything half-assed unless I'm truly like, I just don't really care that much about it. So that's a really good indicator for me about whether or not something is right for me. But when I was actually graduating from high school, I started seeing on Instagram van life. And I've always lived in pretty small situations most of my life. And I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. I can go anywhere. I can have my own house for an affordable price. And it's going to be so cool. I immediately decided that that was something I wanted to do. My parents, thankfully, are mechanics who own a shop and are like very into tiny houses and different modes of transportation. Like my dad is obsessed with like cars, planes, trains, boats, like everything. He's had it all. So he was like very on board with this, but he also was like, you need to make a career and have money. So you need to figure this out. So in the meantime, I decided to go to law school. I had gone to college for political science and education. I thought that I could reform public education in the United States. This was my goal. I start working on political campaigns. I get into the weeds of studying for my LSATs. I take my LSATs. I do not score well the way I had been in practice tests. And I left my test realizing I do not want to go to law school. I do not want to take out $60,000 more worth of loans when I already have $100,000 in both college debt and medical debt. Like, why am I doing this? And I just had like a spiral of like, what do I do with my life? And I ended up moving back in with my parents. And that's when I started getting obsessed with YouTube and watching people on YouTube hike the Appalachian Trail. And
Wait. Just want to get it clear. So you were in college studying political science, thinking about going to law school, but ended up okay. That's where we are
I
in the story.
finished college.
Okay, you
And
finished college.
in between college and when I hiked the AT, I was like trying to convince myself that I did not need to like go on some big adventure or live in a van, or that's something for the future. I need to focus on a career. So I started working in politics in real life, like as an adult and in law offices and studying for law school. And then I was like, basically I got waitlisted at my top law school, which was not even like my goal school. It was just like what I knew I could probably get into. And when I got waitlisted, I was like, what am I doing here?
You can swear on the podcast.
Okay, good, because I swear a lot. It's really hard not to.
You should have seen Rachel. She whispered the F word. Oh, what the fuck am I doing? Okay.
So this is when I found out what freelancing was. I'm like all over YouTube watching van life videos, watching through hikers, and the people who are living nomadically, there were all kinds of careers being thrown around in these videos of like, how do you make money while you're living on the road, And I'm watching this like it is candy, eating it up. And the only thing I could see that was something that I felt like I could do was freelance writing. I had no experience with this. Obviously, I'd like written in college, and I've always considered myself to be a writer. I wrote poetry. I wrote like novels in middle school, but I wouldn't consider that like qualification for me to be doing what I'm doing now. I'm not like a marketing expert by any means, which is essentially all freelance writing is just marketing.
I want to hold on. I want to press pause because I have questions on what you've already said. Okay.
Okay.
So when you were in your what the fuck am I doing space, how did it feel like? Because from what I'm hearing, it seems like, you're going in a direction that's further and further away from what you actually want. Like, how did that feel inside of you?
It felt awful. I was so depressed. I literally stopped taking care of myself. I think at that time I was also telling myself this story that I can't take care of myself, which I feel like I was kind of convinced of my whole life. I grew up with a chronic illness. I spent a lot of time home alone from school. My parents couldn't be home to take care of me. So I essentially homeschooled myself with the help of a state assigned tutor who was really not helpful. For a long time, basically until high school, I was in and out of school for being sick. And then when I got to college, I had a lot of mental health issues. I was hospitalized for a suicide attempt. And so it just like really just kept feeding into this story, like you cannot take care of yourself. And I was never taught how to. My parents didn't teach me how. You're not taught in the hospital how to take care of yourself. They're just like, here's some meds, please get out of our bed. And I had like rudimentary therapy and a psychiatrist, but none of it ever was helpful. It was just like band-aids and band-aids and band-aids. And by the time I was living alone, working on a political campaign, living 13 hours away from my hometown and where I went to college in Columbus, I was like living in Columbus, Ohio. I'm from Maine, went to college in Massachusetts. So that whole area is very home for me. I just stopped taking care of myself. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have support. I'm working all these hours on these political campaigns that feel like when the dirty side of politics and the corruption and all of the bullshit is shown to you, and your ideal was, I'm going to fix this. I can do this. I just had this like idyllic sense of what this life was going to be like, and it was not. And I didn't do my dishes. I didn't clean my house. I just couldn't do it. I was so depressed.
Mm.
I started calling out of work. I started underperforming at work. I quit a campaign job the week before Get Out the Vote, which, if you've ever worked in politics, is like a sin. They weren't paying me at that point. They stopped paying me after a while, and I was like, what am I supposed to do now? I had
Mm.
like 6 cents in my bank account. I quit my job, and I was just depressed. I started working at Starbucks as a barista because it was just like a job that gave you health insurance that you could work without really having any previous skills. And it was a really dark time. It was not good. My mom literally came and helped me move out of my apartment and break my lease and had me move back in with them because it was just not a healthy place for me to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what was around the corner for you from that dark place?
When yeah, when I got when I got home, to put in perspective, my parents at the time were living in a like single wide trailer in the middle of the woods in Maine, like 20 minutes from the nearest town. It was very, I would say, bleak in my opinion. There were like no doors on any of the rooms. I could hear my dad snoring all day. I'm just like sleeping on their couch. Like, what am I doing?
You're like painted. I love it. Everyone close your eyes unless you're driving and picture Rachel.
It was just such a like real, I just did not want to be there. It was not, I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but they don't live a lifestyle I particularly want to live every day. And I just started like sort of living vicariously through YouTube videos. And I was working at Starbucks full time, getting up super early, staying up super late to open and close. And everyone I talked to, like, we were living in New England, so people had heard of the Appalachian Trail. And I started watching all these videos of the Appalachian Trail, and I was like, I want to do that, and I want to do van life. And I'm hearing these things about like you can freelance write, you can start your own business, you can do all these things. My parents are business owners, so I've seen it happen, and I knew on some level I could do it. And I basically was just like, I think this will make me feel better. I'm not giving myself a choice to do anything else. I never thought that I couldn't do it. I just said, I am going to do this, and I did it. I started
You
working
mean
at
the through hiking or the freelance writing?
all of it.
Okay.
I was like, whatever it takes to have a lifestyle that is free, that does not involve me having to deal with this political system or living with my parents or feeling helpless anymore. I'm done. I'm moving forward. I'm doing this. I, at the time, was
Wow.
on 6 different medications. I had a psychiatrist, a therapist. I was going to the doctor a lot still. And I was just like none of it was helping. The side effects from my medication were so bad that it was like physically making me feel ill every day. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So my goal was basically to through hike the AT, get off my medication while I'm on trail, because I knew hiking made me feel better. I knew being in the woods would make me feel better. And I didn't feel that, I'm not saying that medication is bad or that psychiatry is bad or that you shouldn't seek that kind of help if you need it. Like, it was really helpful for me when I was leaving the hospital, for sure. But to be on it 4 years later in the same formula, and my doses are getting higher and higher and the side effects are getting worse, and to continue to have to like trudge through that medical minefield without really feeling supported, I was like, I don't think that my doctor is like having my best interest in mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Trusting yourself, trusting your intuition in that is important.
listening to your body,
Mm.
like, I don't, that was like the first time I started listening to my body. I completely ignored my body for years, to the point of like having seizures and fainting and not even realizing, like not seeing it coming, which seems like wild to me now. But to like really truly tune into your body, and I think that's one thing that AT really helped me with as well. But I sort of just saw it as this path of like, I knew that the AT would change my life. I didn't really know how yet, but I thought that, I just thought I had to do it. So I basically like worked at a gear shop and at Starbucks for, I decided I was going to do it in October, and I left in February. So I think I moved home in like April or May. So I think I had been home for like 3 months when I decided I was going to do the AT. And then moved forward with doing it. And my parents were very, very supportive. I basically didn't save enough money to do it. I bought all my gear and was ready to go. And I got to the start date and I was like, Mom and Dad, I do not have enough money to do this. And they gave me $1,000 to get started. And my mom was like calling gear companies with me to get like sponsorships. Like
Wow.
she helped me get all my shoes for a very, very reduced price from La Sportiva to be like, she just called them and bothered them every day. It was like, just sponsor her. She needs these shoes. And when my gear was failing, she helped me. I would send it home to her and she would resell it on Facebook Marketplace for me so that I could get new gear that was better, that worked
Oh my
better.
God, what a supportive mom.
Yeah, it was incredible. They like drove me all the way to Georgia from Maine and we rented a house together for like 2 days and just like packed and got me to the trail and like fed me way too much food and was like, you're going to do this. We are not letting you quit. And once I got further in, I was writing a blog every single day about like basically just trail journals. And I got a donation button up on my website and people were just donating who were reading my blogs. And I basically subsisted the rest of that hike on donations and sponsorship money.
And how were you feeling?
I felt like the first, I would say 500 or 600 miles, I felt like an imposter. And I was like withdrawing from medications that I was slowly tapering off of. I was not sleeping well. I was not eating well. It was fucking hard. I had never been backpacking before. And I didn't even go on a shakedown hike before I left. I was just like, if I go on a shakedown hike, I'm not going to go. Like, I'm going to be too scared. I need to just do it. And I just did. My tent flooded the first day. My leggings are ripping apart. I'm like destroying shoes. My feet are like blistered. I just could, like, it was on all counts basically a disaster. And then when the donations started rolling in and I got a lot of feedback from people through my Instagram that were like, you cannot quit. This is amazing. We are living through you right now. And I met my hiking partner, Ted. We started hiking together. His trail name was Miles. And he was like, you have to decide you want to be here or you're going to go home. That's the difference between people who finish and people who don't. It's not about your body. It's not about your gear.
Oh my God. Like, pause. This is so powerful. You have to decide to be here. You have to commit. I always talk about this with my clients. It's like, no, you have to decide. Don't leave it up to chance. Don't say, I hope it's going to be okay. No, decide to be here no matter what. Yeah. And what I was telling myself when I was on the PCT is like, this is my life now.
Yes.
This
I have
is
saying that
my
all the
life
time.
now.
Yes.
This is my home. Like, not letting my brain go to, oh, this is hard. I wish I was, I miss my friends. Like, no, don't let your brain go there. Like, this long piece of dirt is your life now.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I truly acted like it was my life now. Like, I sold almost all my belongings before I left for the AT. I didn't really have very many friends anyway, so it was fine. I left. And yeah, those words, like meeting Ted and doing it together was really helpful. And we were just talk about what we wanted our future after the trail to look like. Like, what do you really want in life? Do you want to go home and work at Starbucks? I actually genuinely liked my job at Starbucks. It wasn't my ideal.
Favorite
I didn't
drink?
like being strapped down.
What was your favorite drink?
Honestly, when I worked there, I used to drink coffee with just cream, like just drip coffee with just cream. I will say I don't. Also, the green tea with the strawberry refresher, if you mix them together, is an incredible drink. Half and half. Loved that. But most of their like espresso drinks are not actually great, in my opinion.
Okay, let's get back on the road. We took like a little Starbucks exit. Grab the drink. Back on the road. So you're talking with Ted about what you want your life to look like when you get home.
Yeah. And all the other thru hikers too. Like, thru hikers are aspiring people. Like most people that I talked to had dreams. And I would talk about like, I want to do a podcast. We would hike all day and like listen to podcasts. I was like, I want to be that. I want to be a freelance writer. I want to live in a van. I want to buy a van. I'm going to make this happen no matter what. I'm going to finish this trail. And at that point, I started to feel like a total badass. And I really, truly had never felt like stronger or more empowered. And I was
Mm. I
fully
got
taking
chills.
care of myself.
I got chills. They're multiplying. Oh my God, yes.
It's like there is just nothing like carrying everything you need on your back and feeding yourself all day, every day, and walking and being able to like through hiking. I will do it again. It is 10 out of 10 recommend. It's hard, but it is worth it. So we finished this through hike, and me and Miles both go home to live.
Wait.
Yes.
Pause.
Yes.
This is my commentary. So you say like through hiking is great. I recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
I only recommend it to people for whom it's a calling. Because otherwise
Yes.
it's like, why would you do that to yourself? This is torture. Unless it's your
Yeah.
calling. And like you've been talking about mental health a lot, and I think one of like the causes of mental health issues that's probably not talked about enough is ignored callings. Like
Yes.
people who have callings in their hearts and for whatever reason they don't follow them, either because they're not able to or because they're scared or because
Mm,
they don't, whatever the reason, ignored callings. Like I created an episode about that a few weeks ago. They poison you.
totally. Yeah. If you're feeling like, I just noticed, like looking back, the moments when I felt the most depressed, the most hopeless, the most like I'm procrastinating or I'm not doing what I feel I should be doing, it's there is always something else under that. And now the most it will manifest for me, like I still get depressed for sure. And I still like, have days where I sleep or weeks where I'm just like sleeping extra or I'm procrastinating. But I've come to learn that there is something underneath that. And if you can just find whatever that little gem is in your
Mm,
like cloud of depression, it's usually the answer.
yeah.
So,
I love the question, like, what does my soul need right now?
yeah.
Because there's only so much like therapy and medication that you can take and coaching that you can do and whatever, like
Mhm.
so many sports you can take on. You also have to look at what's hiding underneath.
Yeah. I think it really depends on obviously what your diagnosis is, but I think for a lot of things that are more um like there are certain things that are more genetic mental health issues, for example, like bipolar or schizophrenia. For that, like I don't feel like I have experience with that. I can't speak to that, but I will say with depression and anxiety, at least the way that I've experienced it, I think that medication is like a rescue. It is a band-aid. If you are really, really, really struggling, take it to get back on track. Don't end up, for me, it did not make sense to be on it for the rest of my life. And I didn't want to be, and it didn't feel good to be because it felt like it was just covering something up. And while it rose the tide and I was back to like floating instead of drowning.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And obviously, like both Rachel and I are not mental health professionals. So if you
Mm-mm.
feel like you need help, please see a professional. But yeah, I love this analogy of like it just brought you back to a functioning state.
Yeah. And then like at that point, if you're still like to find out what I was drawn to, something that's really helped me is like, if I could do anything right now, no matter how much it cost, no matter what it took,
Mm,
what would it be?
great
Or
question.
what is my inner child craving right now?
Yeah, please everyone note these questions for your journaling.
I will say too, I did the artist's way, and I feel like a lot of it was a little too like verbose for me. It was just like very wordy. There's a lot of writing that I did not want to read. But the journal questions, like I have never thought about my inner child so much as when I was doing this program. And I'm like, oh, your inner child exists and it really matters. And it might be screaming at you and you don't even know. Like I would have
Mhm.
these dreams that I'm like careening down a hill in a car and I'm in the back seat. I have no control over the steering wheel and the gas pedal. And there's a baby in a car seat in the front seat. And it's like your inner child is just like screaming at you through your anxiety, you know?
Mm.
It's wild, but listen to your body. Like it's probably trying to tell you something. And if you just ignore it and tell yourself what you should do and keep doing that, you're going to continue to be in a cycle of just feeling stuck.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my experience.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your experience. So let's hear now about how you entered the world of freelance writing
Yeah. So
after the
after,
AT.
yeah, right after the AT, I got home in late 2018, fall 2018. We went home to live with my parents in a camper trailer in their backyard that
When you
it
say
was
we, who are
me
you?
and Miles, my hiking
Okay,
partner,
sweet.
Ted Miles. Yeah. We were dating at that point.
Okay.
And yeah, we weren't. I think part of the reason I didn't really get post-trail depression is because we did it together and we came home together.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of went through all of that together,
Okay.
which is wild. But anyway, so we didn't really have our electricity was an extension cord for my parents' house. And winter was coming. We had a wood stove, we had a bed, we had a table, we had one lamp and an extension cord. And it was obviously we could like use stuff at my parents' house when we needed to, but it was just not ideal. We didn't have like interior plumbing or a kitchen or, Wi-Fi. And so getting started, I borrowed a Chromebook from my dad. That was all I had. And I would go to this coffee shop like 40 minutes away in the next town over and use their Wi-Fi all day while they were open. And I would just go. When I originally started, I had no idea what I was doing. So I just like Google all of these options. I somehow found Upwork, I think through a blog, and I thought it was a good idea. So I tried it out and I got clients. And the thing with Upwork clients, at least from my experience, I didn't get very good clients. They weren't very high paying. They weren't like my ideal, but they were clients and I was learning. And I just didn't let myself, so like I just said yes to everything. And even when I didn't know how to do something, I would just Google it and I would tell them that I knew how to do it. And I would just figure it out. And if I couldn't figure it out, I would tell them, like, I'm sorry, I actually genuinely can't take on this project. I would like to relinquish it. And like one time I did end up like walking away from a project, but for the most part,
You
it
would
was
figure it out.
all figuring it out. And I never really failed, which is like crazy. I mean, of course, you're sending, all of these proposals and not necessarily getting an answer. There's a lot of rejection involved. But for the most part, it's just like get an assignment, figure it out, get an assignment, figure it out. And
Mm.
I was living for free with, we weren't paying for housing. So the worry about like getting a steady income wasn't quite there yet. Like obviously I needed money and I needed to make money and I wanted to get out of the situation I was in. But I was more focused on like just how can I get started with freelance writing? I just know this is the answer. And then after that, in February, so it was like 6 months later or so, we moved down to North Carolina to live with Ted's mom for a few months, Miles, my hiking partner and boyfriend at the time, because we just couldn't do it anyway. Living in Maine in the winter in a trailer that has no insulation and you're not home all day to feed the fire is awful. It like freezes and thaws with your breath. So there's like weird moisture issues and just you're cold all the time. It was not fun.
That'll be a good chapter in your memoir.
Yeah, it, for sure. We learned a lot about like living with each other in circumstances that are not ideal. So we moved down to North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina. That's where I live now. I actually live here because I moved here that time. And I saved everything I made during that time. And I found odd jobs around town. I like worked on an education farm for a while. I was still freelancing on Upwork and I lived there for 3 months, saved up enough money to get a sublet and lived with this like random girl who went to UNC for 3 months. And then I posted on Facebook that I was trying to find a place to live in this like Facebook group for Durham people. And this woman reached out to me. She owns a house in Durham and offered to rent me her guest room for like exactly what my budget was. And she was like, yeah, you can bring your cat. Don't worry about it. This turned out to be like one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Her name is also Rachel. I love her. She's
Thank you,
such
Rachel.
a good roommate. In between this time, me and Ted broke up and he moved to Washington. So when we moved out of his mom's house, he moved to Washington and I just like moved into a sublet. And that was hard, but we're still friends. And I'm glad like what we had, like what happened during our relationship was so important for me getting to this place in my life. And like the mindset shifts that we had together, the amount of growth that we have had together and still continue to have as friends is like remarkable. It's really nice to have ride or die friends. I will say that. So I move in with Rachel. Rachel is a hairdresser. She owns her own business and she is thriving. She owns her own house. She owns her own business. She is like the first responsible adult that I have ever lived with, but also like slightly more reckless than me in other like social emotional ways, if you know what I mean.
I love it. It's like, okay, enters this new character, Rachel. What is Rachel going to teach Rachel?
She's like exactly 10 years older than me. I've never like been to a club. Like I've never danced. I've never like gone out to a bar to meet people. She's this kind of person who like introduces a different social life to me, like going to live music shows. Rarely did that. Did it a couple times in college because someone else brought me. But it was like I had focused solely on my career and through hiking up to this point. Like I went to like jazz club and like I played an musical instrument in a jazz band in college and I played soccer, but that was it. Like I was so focused on figuring out how to have a career that I didn't ever really have fun. And the friends that I made was like Ted because we were through hiking together. It wasn't like I was really like making friends and having community. And she was like, it was just such a different world to me. And she really introduced me to that. And then COVID hit. And at the time I had been working part-time as a barista and working freelance on Upwork still. And I got laid off from my barista job because the coffee shop shut down and everybody got unemployment except me because I was part-time freelancing and I never changed my address because I didn't know how long I was going to live there. I told Rachel I was going to live with her for like 3 to 6 months because I was planning on buying a van and leaving. And in between this time, I had gotten a van and ended up selling it because I didn't trust it. It was a Volkswagen and I didn't trust it and I didn't think it was a good idea. So me and my dad like refurbished it and sold it and put that money on my student loans. So I'm still sort of at square one money-wise. And I didn't really have a choice but to make freelancing work when I got laid off. Like, what else can you do for work when the whole world is shut down? I didn't feel like I had any other options. And Rachel, being the badass that she is like, don't worry, you can live with me. We're going to figure this out. I still managed to pay rent the entire pandemic, but she wasn't like pressuring me, which was very helpful. And I was sitting at her kitchen table trying to figure out how to get clients off of Upwork so that I could make more money because I felt like there was this cap on Upwork and I didn't really have a proper niche. Like I knew I needed a niche. I knew I needed to like focus on something, but I still had no idea what I was doing. And I found a bunch of people who said that they had gotten clients on LinkedIn. So I just I was like, just sitting in front of my computer for literally the first 3 months of the pandemic, staring at LinkedIn, continuing to work these shit jobs on Upwork to like barely pay my rent. And Rachel comes in one day after me just like floundering this whole time. And she's like, just send it already. I'm sick of watching you do this. I'm just like agonizing over this first like letter of introduction I'm going to send, which is actually the method I teach now. I teach freelance writers how to use this method now.
And like, I want everyone to pay attention to all the obstacles that Rachel has gone through to figure out freelance writing and all those hours and hours, like now she teaches people how to do that in such a more simple, easier way. Like fast tracking all that she like learned the hard way, making it, I'm sure your clients have to do trial and error as well, but a lot less than
Mm,
what you had to do. And I want to ask you, because we've talked a lot about like the struggles in that you've gone through, but I want to
mhm,
know like what are the benefits for you of freelancing,
mm.
or for the
N-
people that you work with? Like what becomes possible when you're freelancing?
Well, I think at that time, one of the major benefits was that like I could just move to North Carolina where it was a lot easier and cheaper to live without question. Like I just moved here and continued to freelance and I
Mhm.
wasn't worried about like a job, right? Um, and then also now for me, like freelancing is just my life now. Like it's just my job now. There you get to a point where you just like show up and you're just like at work and it's so cool. But it allows you
Mhm.
to like taking your work anywhere is major. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want, which is huge for me when I wanted to do van life. And you can like take days off when you need to. Like my mental health, while there's a lot of anxiety about like figuring out how to make the freelance lifestyle work for you because is quite a bit of uncertainty and unpredictability. There is also the freedom to like take a mental health day when you need it and not have to like sheepishly walk up to your boss and be like, I need a mental health day. Like, I'm depressed. I'm taking a day off. Don't ask me. It's just such a different world. Like, you're able to actually take care of yourself in a lot of ways that I was not able to when I had a traditional job.
Without having to ask for permission from anyone other than
Mm-mm.
yourself.
And your income too, like while it fluctuates and while compared to your like regular salary job might seem unpredictable and scary, my income has only risen since I started freelance writing
Mm.
in by percentages that I would never have been able to do at a regular job. Like literally doubling my income every single year. That's not real if you're working like a
No.
9 to 5 job or at a coffee shop or retail or
Mhm.
whatever.
No, you get capped at some point. The growth in income is not as stark as it can be when you're freelancing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also want to add like another perspective, because I was a freelancer for about 6 years,
Mhm.
and for me it was like the opposite. There was no anxiety when it came to the uncertainty. Like I thrived
Mm,
more than I did in a job. Like I got a job as an employee because I thought, I guess I should try it. I guess like
mm,
people get jobs in offices. I should be a reasonable adult and try it. And I was miserable there, versus like just owning who I am. Like we were talking at the beginning and being like, no, I love to be able to change my mind, to have like a flexible way of living where I can decide to go on a trip, where I can decide to, oh, I don't like working on that kind of stuff anymore. I'm changing my course. Like I loved and thrived in that flexibility. And many people told me like, oh, don't you freak out with like the uncertainty? And I was like, no, actually, 'cause this is in alignment with who I am.
mhm. Yeah, I think it can go either way. Like, I don't think there's really a middle ground for this. Like, there are
Mhm.
people who thrive and there are people who freak out, and either way, you can be successful.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
used to have what one of my previous boyfriends, used to call my quarterly freak out, which is like every 3 months I'd freak out about like I need to make more money, I need to get more clients. What? And he'd be like, "You're having a quarterly freak out. I don't know why you're still a freelancer." And I'm like, "Shut up, Paul."
Yeah, I mean, there's never gonna be like a way of life where you're having happy thoughts all the time.
Exactly. Yes. The
You get to
benefits outweigh
choose.
the costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
get to choose like the kind of challenges that you're going to face.
I think also like more the freedom to choose, like you said, like to work on what you want and change your mind. Like, I don't think my longest contract so far, and this is like I'm 5.5 years into freelancing, is a year long. But previous to this contract, I've never worked for anyone for more than 6 months. And I love that because I would just get burnt out on a project or sick of something, or I didn't want to work with this person anymore. And the freedom to be able to just be like, actually, I don't like this employer. I am done. You can't just
Yeah.
do that at a regular job. Like, I have other clients, I mean, you can, but like, I have other clients to bridge the gap and make this transition and just immediately switch to a new client and fill in my
Mhm.
schedule. Whereas, like, with a full time job, you'd be like, peace, bro. And maybe you've been interviewing and applying on the side, but that's like a whole side hustle to basically like apply for all these jobs and interview. And like, you can't use that employer as a recommendation necessarily. Like, it just gets really messy and you might have a financial gap that I don't have to deal with at all.
Yeah. And you get to decide, like, okay, maybe in the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna go all in and work a lot, and then the 3 weeks after that, I'm gonna take it chill.
Yes.
You have control over that. You can, like, work around your cycle. You can also decide to, like, just double your rates randomly,
Hmm.
and you have so much power over many elements of your lifestyle.
Yeah. And there's this massive aspect. The biggest thing for me, I think, was this personal growth. Like, this is why we're all here, obviously, self growth nerds. Like,
Self-growth
but
nerd. It's not
it's
about the hiking, it's not about the freelancing, it's about the growth opportunity.
it really is like the most growth you will ever experience in your life because there's no, like, you don't have a choice but to conquer your money mindset and like walk in
Mhm.
and ask for what you're worth and say no to people who aren't going to pay you what you're worth and say no to people who aren't in alignment with what you're trying to do. And like, you have to grow as your own boss. You have to learn how to manage your own schedule. You have to learn how to really like take care of yourself better and listen to your
Mhm.
body. And like, if you get burnt out in a full-time job, like, it's mostly your boss's problem. And also it sucks for you to have to deal with. But like, the repercussions, aside from maybe having to get a different job, aren't necessarily going to fall on you. If you get burnt out in freelancing, you're probably going to be screwed or at least just like going to have a really hard time for a while. And so, like, listening to your body, like, when we're hiking, we say, like, drink water before you're thirsty, eat a snack before you're hungry. It's the same with burnout. Like, take a day off before you get burnt out, right?
Mhm. And that's a lesson that some people learn the hard way, but it's good to have mentors like you who can remind us of that. And so that these are like obstacles that you go through while you're a freelancer, but I'm curious, like, from your experience, what are the obstacles before, like, that
Mm.
keep people from making that decision to transition towards freelancing? What gets
Well,
in their way?
it's really easy to get stuck in what you're comfortable with and not take the leap to change. Like, freelancing can be, like we said, it can be anxiety inducing, can be scary, it can be unpredictable. And there's also this aspect of like, you don't know all the answers yet, and it feels like you need to in order to do it. But like I said at the beginning, I was Googling everything and I already had clients. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm not like, people tend to scoff at that and they're like, oh, sure, you don't have any idea what you're doing. Like, no, I genuinely had no fucking clue. I felt lost. And you just push through it. And that's where you learn. Like, the willingness to learn has to be there. And I mean, the nice thing about, like, if you take a course with me, you don't necessarily need to know all of that because we will do it together and I will teach you all these things. But yeah, it's like this fear of the unknown and getting stuck in things you're familiar with. It is much easier to just continue to do what you're already doing than I mean, it might seem like it's much easier, but in
Mhm.
reality, once you take the leap into that thing you're scared of, while you're having to learn and encounter these obstacles, I found it to be much easier because I was so much more passionate about it. I actually had the energy to like show up at work and
Yeah.
do this. Whereas like showing up at Starbucks at that point was like really draining and I didn't want to be there.
Mhm. And so, like, a question that comes to mind is, yes, there seems to have a big cost to taking the risk of making that change, but also you have to ask yourself, what's the cost of keeping going in the direction that you're currently going in? Like, if you keep going d for 5 or 10 years,
Mhm.
what kind of person are you gonna be in
Right.
5 to 10 years versus if you start making that transition now,
Hmm.
um, who are you going to be in 5 to 10 years? Like, yes, you might have gone through challenges, but you might be like a more passionate, fulfilled person.
Yeah. And like you could be making more money. And it really doesn't take that long. Like it took me a long time to make the transition because I didn't really get help until I was already like 2020 when I got laid off from my job was the first time halfway through that year after I had already like gotten off Upwork, gotten onto LinkedIn, gotten new clients, did I ask for help from a business coach. And that was revolutionary for my business. I had like 12 clients. I was past burnt out and I was like wicked undercharging and working like 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was insane. And I felt like I had to be doing that. And then I talked to this business coach and she was like, well, double your rates, drop half your clients, and you're good to go. And I did exactly what she said. And I was like, oh, you could just do that? I didn't know. And that's the kind of stuff that it's like, if I had learned that in my first 3 months, I never would have gotten to that point either. And so it's
Yeah.
nice to have that like mind-blowing experience. Like it took me all of this time because I was just like muddle fuddling around, like having no idea what I'm doing, not asking for help, not investing in myself, not getting as far as I could have. Whereas now I see freelancers succeeding in like 3 to 6 months and
Yeah,
going
that's
off on their
crazy.
own. That's like,
Like, quick story, one of my first coach, she said to me, "Your rates don't make sense. If you don't charge at least X amount of dollars, I'm gonna come to your house and punch you in the face." And sometimes I think you need that because you just don't know. You don't know you're doing your best. So it's helpful
mm-hmm.
to like surround yourself with people who've gone through where you are and they can enlighten you on, what's possible for you. So you
Yeah.
say that what you've seen is like people in 3 to 6 months. What happens in 3 to 6 months usually?
Usually they're just like working either full-time, part-time, whatever their goal was. Like that's the window in which they hit their goals. So people will come to me saying like, I want to quit my job, or I want to make X amount of money, or I want to go full-time, whatever. That's generally when it hits. So like I've had freelancers spend like 2 months, 2 or 3 months getting their business foundations together. That's like deciding what you want to write about, deciding the type of writing you want to do, the type of client you want to get, setting up your business bank account, like all of that's foundational stuff, getting contracts. And then they start pitching in month 3, and then 21 days later they have their first client. Like almost like clockwork, you have your first client within a month of pitching and sending
Mm.
letters of introduction. But in order, like it's so help, like I give them templates and we have a roadmap, so you just walk through the steps of like, okay, it's basically a checklist of like all the things you need
Oh my
before you get a
God.
client. It's like everything I wish that I had when I first started. I feel like I sort of like walked through the woods and like gathered all of these things that are on the checklist on like a through hike of a trail essentially, and I'm like at the end of the trail just like giving you the basket, like here you go, this is all you need.
It's almost kind of like you're doing like the AT, but you're going in zigzags instead of staying on the trail. Like you're tracing the trail for them so they don't have to zigzag all their way to the end.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And like how does it fit into their life, as in do people like quit their job when they reach like the same revenue? Do they do that part-time? Like what does the transition actually looks like?
It depends on the person. Some people get fed up with their job and quit before we talked about they were going to quit, and it's usually fine. Like none of them have ever had to like go back to the job that they quit. Some people are like, actually, I would feel better if I waited until I had enough money. So some people will like use their freelance income to save up like a little savings. So when they do quit, they have money to live off of just in case. But usually their freelance income will cover it anyway. So now they just have a nice
Yeah.
emergency savings.
How much
So
time do they need on the side, like if they have a full-time job?
generally 5 hours a week is enough
Okay.
to get started. Once you get clients, it depends on the work that you take on. But you can, if you just have one client, 5 hours a week is all you need if you want to just have a side gig.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And tell us more. So you're hinting at the work that you do, but tell us more about like what's coming and how they can get help from you.
Yeah. I'm launching Camp Moxie, which is a 12-week, 3-month long boot camp for new freelance writers, so no experience required. It's coming out. Enrollment will start March 19th, later this month, and then that program will start in April. And this includes a group coaching call every 2 weeks with me to help you stay on track. And you can ask any questions you have and get like custom support on like how much your rates are going to be and what your niche is going to be and all of these things.
Mm.
And this is perfect. Like if you still have a job, you can absolutely do this. If you already quit your job, you can absolutely do it. I'm here for either of those situations.
And what can they expect like after going through Camp Moxie?
So when my students graduate from Camp Moxie, they are working in their first month to get their clients. And then after that, it just becomes like going to work, doing your job. So you'll be already, your business will be set up when you graduate from Camp Moxie. We start pitching during Camp Moxie. So theoretically, in the first few weeks after camp, you should already have your first clients
Oh
and
my
keep
God.
going.
Amazing. So they can like imagine a big change in their life that's in the next year. Like in a year from now, you could be doing something completely different
Absolutely.
is what I hear. And who's like the people that you love working with that are the perfect fit for this kind of work?
My favorite people are people who are not like
Let's talk about our favorite people.
I love people who are like not afraid to hear me say that sounds like an excuse.
Uh,
That so like being ready to actually dive into this and work on it and work on yourself throughout it, and just like knowing that what you're doing right now is not what you want to do, whether you're in a job that you don't like or you're just in a job that's like keeping you from doing what you want. Like I genuinely loved being a barista. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, it was exhausting sometimes, but like I never said I hate this job. But what I did say was I would love living in a van full time even more. And so if that's like a situation you're in, we can absolutely do that. But yeah, if you have a job and you feel a calling to writing and you don't want to do that job anymore, you would rather write, this is for you.
and how do you know if like you're good enough of a writer?
You don't need to be a good writer. I was not a good writer when I started. Like I should actually round up some of my old writing for the Camp Moxie people to see, because it was bad and people still paid me to do it. It's fine. I will also help you become a better writer. I'll teach you how to write an SEO blog post. So this is like a search engine optimized blog post. This is the easiest service to sell as a new freelance writer. I'll teach you how to do that during the course. But I have a lot of experience doing other types of writing, and I'm happy to help you get on track with that.
That's awesome. And where can people get more information about Camp Moxie and about you?
On my website, meltzerseltzer.com, and my Instagram, my handle is Rachel H. Meltzer. My Instagram will have updates all the time. I literally post almost every day.
Perfect.
And
And there's gonna be those links in the description of the podcast.
on my website, you can sign up for my email newsletter that has free resources every week and how-tos. And that will also have the early bird sign up wait list for Camp Moxie. So if you wanted to get a discount and make sure you can secure your spot, definitely sign up for the newsletter. That will be in there.
Perfect. I would bet that if you're listening to this right now, you know inside your heart if like that's something for you. If you have like a nudge, like a curiosity, just go check it out. Like, listen to the inner whisper. Okay, so Rachel, thank you so much. Before we leave, I want to ask you two fun questions.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I love books. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have a recent favorite that you can recommend?
I've been reading a lot of romance novels lately.
Ooh, okay.
They're like
Give us a
candy
good
to
romance
me.
novel.
My favorite romance writer currently is called Daisy Prescott, and she has a whole series based in the Smoky Mountains National Park. It's great. It is very cotton
What's the
candy,
series
if you will.
called?
Um, that is a great question that I don't know the answer to. I think the first book is called like Happy Trail or something like that.
Ooh, very
Yeah,
intriguing. Okay.
it's good. It's like definitely very like it's a little heteronormative, but other than that, delightful.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out. Daisy Prescott. And last question. What do you nerd out on these days?
Birds. I've
Ooh.
been really into bird watching lately. I'm going birding this weekend with a club called Feminist Bird Club.
I love it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite bird?
I
Or
don't think so yet. I really like snowy owls. They're very hard to come by, and there used to be one that lived right near the beach house I lived in last winter in Maine. And it was cool to like get to see it every day because I know it's rare.
I bet
But
that was a
yeah,
sign. I bet that was a sign for this period in your life.
it really was. I think it was.
Oh, Rachel, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on the
you.
podcast.
This was great. It's very fun.
Have a great day, everyone. If you love what you're hearing on the Self-Growth Nerds podcast and you want individual help finding a new direction for your life and developing the courage to make your dreams a reality, you have to check out how we can work together on selfgrowthnerds.com or message me on Instagram at selfgrowthnerds. My clients say they would have needed that support years ago. So if you're tired of feeling like you're wasting your life, don't wait. Get in touch now, and I cannot wait to meet you.